Hello.
We're back.
Yeah, if the audio's fucked up, it's Eli's fault, not ours.
Eli
He
borrowed our Zoom
Yeah.
recorder, and so all my carefully calibrated knobs and stuff are turned different directions. But I'm on top of it.
Yeah.
I'm the audio engineer.
Yeah. Congrats to Eli on his opening. That was
Mazel tov,
fun
Eli.
time.
Yeah.
R.I.P. to Janet Malcolm. I'm really sad she died.
Oh yeah.
Sucks.
That is sad.
She was like the last.
How old was she?
86. She was born. She's actually born the same year as Joan Didion.
Oh,
She and Didion are like the
damn.
last of that generation.
Sad.
Yeah.
Oh, that'll be a sad day when
It
when
sucks,
Didion goes.
Yeah.
Aw.
These women stood for.
She is elegant and incisive. The Washington Post obituary says. Well said.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm such a huge admirer of Janet Malcolm because she has like all of the qualities that modern journalists today don't have.
Did you know she was born in Prague?
Yeah, she's Jewish. Her name is Yana Wienerova.
Cool.
Yeah.
Sick.
Yeah, that's why she was so obsessed with ethics and psychoanalysis. It makes total sense because she's part of that like continental tradition.
Right.
Of like Freudians.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it's cool. But I think like her and she and Joan Didion are like kind of foils for each other, but very well matched. And like the two,
because Didion is so like flowery and ornate.
Yeah, but they were both like discreet in different ways, which is something that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, well, it's hard.
Yeah, it's impossible. It's
really hard to practice discretion.
Yeah.
As any kind of person of note in this attention economy, you know?
I mean, it's like half not your fault and half your fault because you like buy into it, but it's very hard to not buy into it and da-da-da.
Yeah. There's a thin line between like what you have to do and what you want to do, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think like the thing with Malcolm too is that she was very humble and self-effacing, but underneath the humility and self-effacement was like a great strength and even arrogance.
Well,
like,
that's always how it goes. Yeah. Humility is very seldom like pure.
Yeah. It's like the Orson Welles thing on Woody Allen. Where he was like, men like me have to pretend to be humble, and this guy shows up at a party and is like self-effacing and like gets chicks or whatever. Anyway, she's cool. I highly recommend all her literature.
I guess someone's gonna have to finally pen that book of essays, Anna, now that all these broads are dying off.
Yeah, well, it's funny also because like I know people are fond of saying that I've only read 3 books in my life. But if you count Janet Malcolm's Oeuvre, am I pronouncing that correctly, as one book, that's actually technically 4 books.
That's 4 books. And those are good. Those are a good 4 to have 4 read.
Books. Yeah.
I brought Culture of Narcissism with me to Berlin being like, ooh, what am I going to read on the plane? I was like, I'm finally going to crack this book open. Yeah. Dead ass did not even read the first page yet, Anna. I'm gonna try. Like
the first time I read that book, I was probably like in grad school, and it literally took me like 7 tries to get past the introduction, because the introduction, he like blows his load in the introduction, like says everything that like, and then there's like the essay Narcissist Society, that's like kind of like a prelude to the book,
right?
So like he's very hard to read, Christopher Lasch, because he's so chock full of like quotables.
Yeah,
it's like accessible, but it's difficult because there's like too much.
I don't know what it is, why I have this psychological block with even, like,
everybody does. I do too.
I've literally like tried and then like started taking selfies
with like the book.
Just like zoned out.
Yeah, you should have just like held the book up while you were giving your acceptance speech. Congratulations, by the way. You and Maddie looked gorgeous. I was very proud and happy to see you gals.
The blue backdrop was very flattering for us.
Yeah,
I think I was very thankful as I was like looking through the photos the next day. I was like, oh, this blue is like nice.
Yeah, that's probably why they do it, right?
I mean, I think they try and use a universally like flattering color, but sometimes they're just black, you know, like the logos on it. But the blue is very tasteful. I wasn't in Berlin for very long,
Yeah.
so I don't have really many impressions.
Yeah.
I was the first award that they gave out, which is why I was like acting so awkward up there, because I didn't totally get the protocol yet. Also, I've never won an award before.
Yeah, it's weird.
So I didn't like, she had to yell at me to like take my prize, because I thought maybe someone would like hand it to me, or I would like shake the jurors' hands, or like, you don't know what really to do. No one tells you.
Yeah, it's also scary being yelled at by Germans.
Exactly.
You're just like, you shitsin.
But yeah, obviously it's super validating.
Yeah, that's cool.
Whatever.
That's awesome.
Thanks. The Viewfinder is really, really cool.
Yeah, that seemed cool. I mean, it's like a magnifying thing that you like frame.
It's not, you can like change it based on like aspect ratio and like film and stuff. But I really don't, I'm not going to pretend to know like the fundamentals of cinematography.
Yeah.
But I look forward to maybe incorporating some of that knowledge into my next movie.
Yeah. It looks like, you know, it reminded me of, it looks like those things that you do the Ouija board with. Mm-hmm. So that's cool. Yeah.
That is kind of a viewfinder. It's like something that you peer at something through.
It just spells out the N word. You're like drunk trying to get a sign from grandma or whatever.
Yeah. On my walk over here, there were so many people like canvassing for mayoral candidates. And that's annoying.
Yeah, I hate that.
I know that I should care more about who the mayor is.
Yeah.
Like I'll give my haters that. Like I should care a little more, but to care so much that you're going to like go out there and hand out leaflets and try to accost people in the street for like your candidate.
Are they, but I mean, what percentage of them are volunteers and what percentage of them are like
hired by the
local
campaign?
Chinese people who are hired by the campaign? Because like in this neighborhood, there goes the baby. Oops. He's like, I hate canvassers.
You mean for Yang?
No, there was like, I don't remember who it was for, but they were canvassing not for Yang, and it was just like local Chinese people who like they don't really care about local politics, you know?
I mean, I saw a lot of Yang posters in my walk through Chinatown, and I'm sure they like may not like, I don't know, maybe the super elderly, but like Chinatown's probably a fairly powerful like
block
constituent. Not like the Hasids, you know, but like, so I don't know. It seems like they're all volunteers, everyone that I see, because they're kind of like dressed kind of the way that people do, and I don't know. Yeah. It seems like people wouldn't do a good job if you just hired them to do it. You have to really like approach people with like gusto and be ready to engage with them about like. Yeah. Because
I don't know, because I read somewhere that they get paid like $20 an hour or something. Who knows? But we should get to the bottom of this, but we probably won't. I saw some little Chinese ladies putting up Yang signs under my like stoop, under this awning where all the crackheads hung out, and then I came back later and the crackheads had torn down their handiwork, which I felt really bad about. And like peed on it.
Yang's the only one I know about who's running because of name recognition.
Right, yeah.
Like if I were to cast a vote, I probably would vote for him, but
just there's that former police chief guy, the black guy who's running. He's like a vegan.
I saw him on TV.
Yeah.
Okay.
Who like lied about living in the city because they like profiled him, and he had like meat and fish in his refrigerator, and so people surmised that it was his son's house. He was like staying at his son's crib or whatever. And then there's this woman, Maya Wiley, who's the AOC endorsed candidate, who's like a black lady but politically white, and I was like checking out her website, and it literally the bio started with Maya Wiley has spent her life overcoming trauma, and I was just like, not today, Satan. No more of these like.
Doesn't seem true to the New Yorker spirit. Yeah, you know.
I don't want that in a candidate, whether or not it's true.
No, I don't want anyone lamenting any traumas.
Yeah, and it's just like, you know, like people today, they want to be seen as a good person more than they want to be seen as like a strong or a brave person. But unfortunately, when you're a politician, part of the role of being a public servant is not always appeasing everyone, but being strong and brave enough to kind of implement the policies that help the most people. But anyway,
but that hasn't been the case for
forever.
For a long time.
But she's probably going to lose, so it's fine. I mean,
who do you think will win?
I have no idea. I haven't been following this. It's really depressing that like after de Blasio, who's like the most fake and gay mayor ever, like it's so sad that that guy was the mayor of New York.
And I think Yang would be cool, knowing absolutely zero about his policies or what. I think he's better suited for something like that than like being the president of a country. Like managing a city seems kind of a little more technocratic or something. Like he could maybe on like a small scale actually like implement positive changes with like math and like
I think, you know, like
being like a smart Asian guy, like that seems like good, you know.
That's what the city needs.
Who's like kind of doesn't seem that morally compromised beyond like
he seems like a nice guy and he seems like he means well, but I think he's like clueless and doesn't get it really like that. I don't know, like,
well, he's really not from New York.
But I don't know, whatever, we're screwed either way. We should endorse a mayoral candidate. I guess it's too late in the game. Just like pick someone off
that
from the curb.
One of us should run. I've got a lot on my plate. I can really handle it. The G7 summit happened. The gays.
I was like kind of like spinning my wheels for a joke to call them. It's the group of seven, right?
The group of seven.
This is really the time of like international jet setting summits for like vampiric elites, because the NATO summit happened too, right? Or that's the same thing.
I don't know if it did.
Okay, I thought that was the one that Putin and Biden
they just met. Biden did like a little kind of diplomatic jaunt around Europe where he did the G7 summit, and then he met with Putin, and then they held separate kind of press conferences.
Right.
Super boring. And there are too many of these like elite conventions like Davos and stuff. And that was where the Great Reset happened, right?
That was like, that's the World Economic Forum.
So they joined forces again to like talk about how they're going to continue to implement the Great Reset. Basically a totally fake and gay meeting where like nothing actually gets accomplished. I read, I think in the Atlantic, that article about like G7 kind of post-Trump that's made it seem like China was like the big concern.
Right.
And then I'm more, I guess, kind of interested in the Putin meeting. Because that pertains more directly to our Russian-American interests.
So wait, they revisited the Great Reset.
No, I was just making a joke. But I think the Great Reset, it was poorly received. Like, and so they're not going to talk about it anymore, but that's probably still the plan.
Well, the thing that was like, you know, that saying, you'll own nothing and you'll be happy, that people like turned into a dystopian meme because it was like horribly received. I was like thinking the other day how that is really this generation's there is no alternative.
You'll own nothing and you'll be happy.
It's like it serves the same purpose, but like whereas TINA was kind of no less dystopian, it was at least kind of, it had scale and magnitude and was respectable and dignified.
Well, it had like authority. Whereas you'll be happy is really twisted and kind of worse.
Well, it's like everything, like in the spirit of the times, it's like informal, it's like personalized, it's twee, unserious, like flimsy, like everything of this age. Like they couldn't even come up with like a sufficiently ominous sounding mantra.
Right.
Like it is ominous, but like in a small time, petty way. And it's funny how like that, quickly, it's like very kind of like symbolic of our times, how that was. Anyway, so
So yeah, I sent you this article from Russia Today that happened prior to their meeting.
Oh, right.
That was called Soviet Collapse Taught Russians the Danger of Being a Messianic bitch superpower. Biden makes it clear America hasn't learned the lesson. And they talked about the way in which Biden was sort of framing his trip to Europe as an effort to rally the United States and its allies in an existential battle between democracy and autocracy. Mm-hmm. And he said about Russia, because I read a couple things of like what to glean from Biden and Putin's meeting, which is basically Biden's like making a diplomatic effort, but they're not actually really talking about much. They did talk about human rights, Russia's like human rights violations.
Right.
And Putin brought up Iraq, Afghanistan, and Gitmo, as well as the January 6th like insurrection, because all of those like protesters are being brought to trial now. And then later said that it was ridiculous. Biden said it was ridiculous to compare the two because the insurrectionists were, quote, literally criminals, which of course you can make the case for any political prisoner in Russia or any of the other less relevant countries. Yeah. Biden said that Russia wants, quote, legitimacy in the world stage. They want desperately to be relevant. And I thought that was so shady.
It's really insulting.
And so like, I mean, imagine saying that about any other country.
Yeah.
And then just in terms of like the G7 summit is this way, and for like the most relevant countries to get together to decide what happens to the rest of the world. Like that is Russia. I mean, America does have this like, they're obsessed with Russia. Russia's totally this like dark-sided mirror of like America's own corruption, which is why they're so obsessed with Russia like compromising our democracy, because we know that our democracy is a sham.
Well, yeah, and it's pure projection. And I think like Russia doesn't have to be relevant because it's timeless. I'm not like singing the tune of Russian supremacy, but I thought it was interesting.
No, America's so jealous and preoccupied with Russia because like, how dare you say that like...
Yeah. It reminds me of that thing Biden said recently that Zizek wrote up where he accused Putin of not having a soul, which like, you know, probably he doesn't as a member of the KGB. Any kind of intelligence people the world over don't have souls.
Well, neither does Biden.
Yeah, but it's like so profoundly racist. That was Zizek's point, that it's like creepy and racist to accuse like the Russian leader of not having a soul. And I think like if Russians are morally superior on some level, as this like author kind of like touches upon, it's not
in the Russia Today article.
Yeah. It's not due to any like inherent genetic advantage. It's that just like Russia was a border between East and West, and like was like, you know, subject to like Mongol invasion and local autocratic rule, and then it was like the guinea pig for communism, which you can argue, I mean you should argue, is not even a Russian system, right? It was imported from Europe.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting like framing on the flip side from Russia, as well as like in the American media, this kind of like, oh, Putin just wants to be relevant. He's getting what he wants by us even like agreeing to like take this summit with him because America is so exceptional and important. Yeah. And then in Russia now, in that, you know, in that article, at least, taking this position of moral superiority because Russia did lose the Cold War. Yeah. And it's really easy to be like, well, we learned our lesson and we're not trying to be like a messianic superpower because their resources are like depleted and their country's like just not as powerful as America. Yeah,
I forgot where I read this, maybe in that article, but they, you know, Russia's economy is like the size of Italy's economy essentially. So like that's, you know, one element of it. I think like, but
America hasn't learned its lesson, as it like may very well one day.
Well, yeah, it's a matter of it's not a matter of like supremacy. It's a matter of timing. Everyone learns their lesson eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like, you know, I think like as the author says more or less that their philosophical outlook is just more integrated.
Yes, Russians.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I mean, America is obsessed with Russia because they shouldn't be, really, because America has a lot of great things going for it, but it is like a relatively new country that is super dysfunctional and also crumbling. And this was all like the whole premise kind of the Cold War.
Yeah.
It's been like this for like 70 years.
Yeah. And it's like basically also like irrelevant whether or not Russia has imperialist designs, which it has in the past and it probably does now, because all nations are fundamentally, like all powers are fundamentally have to be imperialist on some level. And like that's irrelevant because the kind of hegemonic imperialism now belongs to the United States.
And the global elites.
Yeah.
But for Biden to kind of frame it as the existential superiority of like democracy versus autocracy is ridiculous, because we all know there's like liberal democracy is responsible for just as much suffering as autocracy is.
Yeah,
and that
totally.
The shots are called at the end of the day by the most relevant countries, aka the wealthiest ones, aka the ones that are the most like compromised by capital and like global wealth inequity.
Yeah, totally. And I like
is Greece irrelevant? Like they started civilization.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, I guess we'll talk about.
We'll get
Greece.
into Lindy. Yeah.
But I'm looking up this quote from the foreign minister Lavrov, who made a good point.
He said, Moscow has no superpower ambitions, regardless of how much people try to convince themselves and everyone else otherwise, in a riposte to Biden's assertion that a struggle between Western liberalism and other systems was inevitable. He declared that Russia had no interest in a competition for ideological or geopolitical domination.
Yeah, and he talks about like that Russia doesn't have the messianic fervor with which our Western colleagues are trying to spread their values-based democratic agenda throughout the planet. That was like a good framing. Because I think like, and this guy brings up like a Dostoevsky quote about how basically the Russian gets along with everyone and is accustomed to all. He sympathizes with all that is human, regardless of nationality, blood, and soil, which is, by the way, why we're the best at racism. And he talks about, by contrast, the West tries to find a universal human ideal in themselves and by their own power, and therefore they can altogether harm themselves and their cause. And it's true, like this kind of like belief system that's Manichean in nature, that's like good versus evil, that has like existential stakes, where you envision yourself to be on the side of good.
And that was the mistake of communism. That's like the lesson that Russia learned, was that imposing this like universal model of goodness was doomed to fail.
Yeah, because ethnic minorities and the middle classes will eventually like rise up and defect. Like, you know, all the republics will want their own independence. All the middle class Jews want to flee to the United States and Israel.
Well, yeah, and ditto for liberal democracy.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is like inevitable. Like, you know, like on the last episode, I was talking about how like hyper-normalization in the USSR took the form of maintaining the pretense that it was a functional society. In the United States, it takes the form of maintaining the pretense that it's a uniquely dysfunctional society, where the dysfunction, I think, is falsely presented to you as the original sin of racism or the continued legacy of misogyny or whatever, like things that aren't really the core problem.
I mean, racism I would kind of disagree with, but in the way in that like America was like a slave owning country and not that long ago.
Yeah, but the kind of fixation on the issue, I think it provides, again, it reconsolidates the power of the elites who can push through all sorts of like demands and like concessions that like ordinary people who would be most touched by racism don't care about and outwardly reject. Like, I
guess I mean more like existentially.
Yeah. No, I see what you're saying. But what I'm saying is like there's this kind of like the difference now is that kind of Russians are used to at this point dealing with the reality at hand, you know?
Yeah.
Like with the practical reality. Like this is our set of circumstances that we're faced with. What are we going to do about it? The other thing is that like if Russians appear like cynical or pessimistic, I think again Americans will catch up to that very shortly.
Yeah, I agree.
Because like the flavor of American exceptionalism again is changing. It's becoming more...
Well, the lofty ideals that America was founded on are becoming increasingly hollow.
Yeah, like the
and everyone
Man and Playboy bunnies.
Like liberty and justice and stuff. Like those, it's clear that there isn't like a robust justice system in the United States. Nor is there particularly that much liberty to be had either.
Yeah, no, totally. So like when people get worked up at me and they're like, you're not Russian, you've been living in this country for 30 years. Yeah, that's true. I consider myself an American and I consider myself a patriot because I think it's tacky to be anything but.
I love America.
Yeah, it's great. Blue jeans, McDonald's.
I mean... Je vais Belarus, but I'm so glad I emigrated.
Yeah, like I have a lot of love for America. I'm not like one of these leftists who's constantly looking for problems with America. I mean, I'm a critic in a way, so like I critique stuff. That doesn't mean I don't see the positive sides. But in this way, I think you and I are both very philosophically Russian in that we reject the idea that like this value-based system of one nation or one people being superior to another.
Yeah.
Like ideal and pragmatics, you know? That's why my read of like BLM and CRT is that the expression that the fight for racial equality takes in this country is very narcissistic. It's very precious. It doesn't help the people that it claims to want to help. And in fact, it actively hurts them. Because it depends on their existence.
Yeah.
That kind of like existential universe, like, you know, I think Russian people are just like more comfortable negotiating the ambiguity.
Well, that has to just do with history.
Yeah.
And America's really young.
Yeah, America's young and hot and catching up to...
They'll figure it out.
I mean, yeah. Well, they're just going to get wise to the fact.
Inevitably, right?
So in a way, I'm an optimist too, because I think more and more people are going to start to realize that they've been sold a bill of lies and that the old kind of American ideals, which were, I think, worthy ideals, no longer really hold.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway. So what happened at the summit basically was that they met in private, but they didn't appear in the press together because the United States wanted to
control the narrative.
Yes.
Because they didn't want Biden to like for his like brain to fail while he was talking to Putin, so he would show weakness.
Well, yeah, it's funny because they made it seem like it was about righting the wrongs of Trump and how Trump had played up to Putin and given him a platform.
Yeah. Which,
like, no offense, but one leader of a sovereign nation doesn't give another leader of a sovereign nation a platform.
It's like when negotiating it's together. Like when we had Steve Bannon on the pod and people said we gave him a platform.
Yeah, I know.
By having him on our podcast.
Yeah, but there was like a point of the New York Times article that I thought was hilarious that I wrote down. Yeah, I love this part. Top aides to Mr. Biden said that during negotiations over the meetings, the Russian government was eager to have Mr. Putin join Mr. Biden in a news conference, but the Biden administration officials said that they were mindful of how Mr. Putin seemed to get the better of Mr. Trump in Helsinki. That's such a like self-dox, like telling on yourself. Like they were afraid that Putin would get the better of Biden because Biden's literally senile.
I know. And then he snapped weirdly at a reporter at his private press conference. So of course it would have been like basically Biden like can't be seen in public with like
yeah this is like
other leaders because they'll like undermine and underscore how brain dead he is.
Yeah, it literally has nothing to do with like Putin or Trump. It's just like, yeah, he can pose in photos like socially distanced, but he can't interact with them. He just like touches Trudeau's beard.
God.
Grabs Angela Merkel by the pussy.
It does make me feel gaslit.
What?
Just to read about like Biden in the press and the constant like he's overcome a lot of tragedy in his life and like just the weird deflecting on his past and his family when like you look at him and he's like drooling and his like eyes are filling with blood because he's like barely alive.
Yeah,
he's like not a competent leader, and he's a puppet, like literally.
I was thinking, I literally had the thought, like, how are they flying him around? I mean, I know he probably flies private and like it's like,
well, it's a PJ.
Yeah, but it's still hard. It's like Air Force One or whatever, but it's still hard for like an old and dying man to
the cabin
go
pressure
up in the air.
And stuff. Yeah.
But yeah, they were like trying to prevent like a massive optics blunder on the world stage. It wasn't because Putin is like an evil dictator and Trump was his like pawn and lackey.
Yeah.
But it's funny that libs are still running with this narrative and other libs believe it.
Because they can't handle how broken and basically non-existent our democracy is. Mm-hmm. They need Russia. That's why it's so laughable that Biden would be like, Russia just wants to be relevant because the dominant liberal ideology totally depends on Russia as this like sophisticated foil.
Yeah.
That's like the reason things are so bad here. The reason Trump got elected, the reason there's like
which makes America look incompetent. Like, why would you promote and advertise that?
They are incompetent.
I mean, that's true, but like, why would you, emphasize it even more?
Yeah.
But it is true. Like, Russia is like the alternate universe, like the other big country where ham was a thing and jelly.
That's why it's also funny, for Biden to be like, let's talk about your human rights violations.
Yeah.
And for Russia to be like, well, what about Guantanamo Bay?
Yeah, no, it's crazy. There was a funny tweet that I saw that was like, it was some lib. It was a video of this woman, Rachel Scott, who's like a black woman journalist for ABC. And the tweet was, ABC's tenaciously brilliant Rachel Scott, a black woman, followed up on a question that I've never heard any white journalist or media person ever ask him being Putin. She put him on blast and had him stuttering to answer the question, which he did not. That's how journalism is done, America. And it was this woman asking him about Russia's human rights abuses and political repression and repression of its journalists, which he answered by bringing up January 6th.
Yeah. And
this guy accuses Putin of stuttering and mumbling. It's like he always stutters and mumbles. He's a gubashnik. They're like trained to be unassuming.
Yeah.
If Putin's not an orator.
He's muttering because he has to talk discreetly from his spy training.
Yeah. No, seriously. And it's like it's so racist. Like, liberals are so racist, calling a black woman journalist tenaciously brilliant. That's so like condescending, like patting her on the forehead.
She served.
Yeah. Watch this journalist own Putin with black girl magic. Anyway, Lindy Man got some press today. Yeah.
The New York Times finally catching up to the cutting edge of Twitter by profiling Paul Scalas.
Yes.
What's his name? Where does he live? I couldn't tell. He lives in like a Mediterranean country.
I think he moved from New York to France. That's what it said in the article.
Okay.
I've
honestly never understood Lindy until I read this piece, and then I kind of was like, oh, okay. So good job, Ezra Marcus.
Yeah.
But I feel like I didn't get Lindy because it's so obvious and like autistic and male and like compartmentalized from like reality or something.
Yeah.
Lindy basically is the principle, as you texted me, like that the longer something has been around, the longer it will endure.
The longer it's likely to endure in the future. Yeah.
Okay. Well, duh.
So this is like a Talebian principle, the Lindy effect. I think that probably we're mangling this definition. That's how I understand it. But I think it's also very Lindy, for the record, that women are fuzzy on the technical details of things.
Yes.
Because we're not autistic and we're intuitive. And like men, as I was telling you, have like a special knack. That's why I find them so endearing and charming and not the monsters or trash that they're portrayed as in the lib femme media.
Yeah.
Because they have a knack of like literally like codifying, over explaining things that are intuitive.
Yeah.
And they love like coining neologisms,
Definitely.
And like, you don't have to give it a word or
you can just vibe with it, or a lifestyle really for for Paul Scholas.
Yeah.
I'm going to pull up the article.
Yeah, me too. So this is written by the boyfriend of your and Leia's friend, right?
Connor,
yeah. Okay. Because I thought that name looked familiar.
He wrote that Sarah Lawrence cult piece.
Okay.
Like a while ago, and he writes for the Times.
Okay. So wait, let me pull up this here article. I guess I have a little bit of a bone to pick with him, or maybe not even him, but the New York Times. But it's funny because in that article, there's this quote: Scholas he has become something more of a lifestyle guru to thousands of Twitter followers, and newsletter readers think Goop or Joe Rogan by way of the Bronze Age. And that's clearly a dog whistle to Bronze Age pervert, because Ezra Marcus was clearly on Twitter like looking into that, but the New York Times can't write a profile of this guy, so they settle for like the next
for
best
the Lindy
thing.
guy. Because Lindy is implicitly like conservative, and
obsessed with antiquity and like the Bronze
which
Age.
Is like fashy. And that was interesting to see like the kind of fashy implications of Lindy be kind of glossed over and not expounded upon. Maybe they were, but because he sort of applies the Lindy effect practically to diet, health, dating, exercise, and practically everything else.
But not medicine, because as Ezra Marcus points out, if you're diagnosed with cancer, seek chemotherapy and don't go on like the Roman medical regimen.
But he, through the Lindy effect, advocates for things like intermittent fasting, which smart. Me too. But which is like kind of dubiously called fasting when he really just means like being vegan,
right? Or like pescatarian.
Well, being pescatarian mostly, and then vegan or completely abstaining for food, and maybe that's like a liability thing where he can't tell people to fully fast or something. More of like a juice cleanse thing. He says toast cigarettes, a 20th century vice, are not Lindy, though tobacco is, and for those who want to smoke in a quote Lindy compatible way, he suggests a pipe.
So this is basically
pipe smoking, more like pole smoking.
Wait, what did you say? Faggotry is Lindy and slavery is Lindy.
Slavery is definitely Lindy. Being gay is the most ancient thing of all.
It's the Lindiest thing of all.
You're so obsessed with like Greco-Roman stuff. Then.
Well, the funny thing with all these guys, who I also, again, I find them endearing and charming and like not that dangerous if you take them for artists and not like political influencers, which everybody wants them to be political influencers.
Well, the article is very apolitical.
Yeah. But like these guys are all like so, like down to Taleb himself, like he's so finicky and insecure. And it's like, don't you realize that you would look much more like solid and hot if you like didn't clap back at all of your haters like a chick? Like, leave that to us women.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, these dudes are always fighting with each other online.
It's just that, and that's where kind of the selectiveness of being Lindy is confusing to my small, feeble female mind. You know, it doesn't really feel like a cohesive like lifestyle. It feels just like a random way to talk about your life.
Well, yeah, it's like me when I like freak out about the COVID vaccine, but then like chain smoke cigarettes and like chug a margarita or whatever. It's like, you know, it's very selective. It's a little pigeon brained. A female brained. Sorry, I'm not trying to be misogynistic. Anyway, but
just philosophically, it doesn't seem like it actually has very strong foundations.
Well, like it does to the extent that like time tested, time honored, time proven things are more dependable. They're not guaranteed, but they're more dependable by default because they've literally stood the test of time.
Right. But then,
you don't need a theorem for that. You
don't. And like there's just progress is also like a factor.
Yeah.
And there's only been so much time, and like progress has happened very quickly in a short span of time.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, but basically, I mean, it's
like the example of medicine being like, you know, you can die of. It's very Lindy to die of like preventable disease.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Yeah, and it's like basically Lindy is stuff I like / stuff that works for me, and non-Lindy is stuff I don't like / stuff that doesn't work for me.
Right.
There was another like operative quote where he talks about how it's not, you know, like a moral compass or a motivational program. Mm-hmm. Which sort of like speaks to that, I guess.
Epstein, he pointed out, exemplified how Lindy is not a moral compass, because he said Epstein was Lindy, quote, some rich guy going around and doing criminal behavior and abusing people is pretty Lindy.
Yeah, pedophilia is really Lindy.
Deeply Lindy. Yeah, he says lots of common behaviors in the ancient world would be considered abhorrent today.
Yeah. So slavery and pedophilia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, women just don't seem to factor into a Lindy framework at all.
Unless we're sitting on the floor.
Right, which is Lindy,
it is
I
Lindy,
guess.
Yeah. We like being low to the ground because we have to squat when we give birth. And,
as you know, yeah.
But yeah, I think this, like, it's this, I think these guys, you know what it is? Like, I was thinking about it. I think it's like these guys are not so much homosexual, their tendencies of homoeroticism, they're homosocial. They're like yearning for a time when it was okay to be dudes doing dude stuff alone in like a dude like environment, and then like slowly sucking each other off. But they're yearning for a time when it was like okay to be a man without it being problematic.
Yeah, just lifting the calf until you can lift the bull type of shit.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was like that was back in the old ancient times where women and young boys are just like a series of holes or whatever.
It's harmless fundamentally.
But I think these are guys who are basically coming from kind of like an educated, often academic background who understandably fantasize about reclaiming a productive masculinity that isn't available to them anymore.
Yeah, but you don't have to go all the way back to like antiquity for that.
Well, yeah.
You could just go to kind of like the 19th century or early 20th even.
Yeah.
The mid-century in a way in America, though arguably that's when like the decline of decadence started to creep in or something. Yeah. But I get it. Like I love the classics, you know. I think it's all very like aesthetic and lofty and admirable. Like I think virtue ethics are something that's really like lost today that we could reclaim.
Yeah, totally.
Just like the idea of even like moving towards some kind of like goodness in a value system. Yeah, having a concept of ethics and understanding what that truly means for you as well as the rest of the world. And virtues. Like there's lots of virtues that are just people don't even think about anymore, like grace. Yeah. Courage. Discretion. The most important one, discretion.
Yeah, which is why I mourn Janet Malcolm, because I think like she's a person who, you know, after her death will be doomed to a kind of obscurity. I think even Joan Didion will be doomed to obscurity in the sense that she's going to be, she's going to be celebrated and beloved, but I think people probably will engage with her work for the most part in a relatively shallow way. You know what I'm saying? I mean, there will be a small minority of people who really kind of understand what she's about, but she's almost going to be like the Audrey Hepburn Breakfast at Tiffany's print that they sell at IKEA, you know? Right. Like in her boat neck and oversized
I love
glasses.
Joan Didion, but she is a bit shallow in that, you know, she really has an overemphasis kind of on like style.
Yeah, and aesthetics.
Yeah. That's like not a totally inappropriate way to engage with her work. But yeah, I know what you're saying. It's
but
like,
from her position, she was really able to tear the activists of her generation a new one, because she saw that they were also mere athletes and stylists. And she was like, look, at least I'm honest about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder if there would be either a pre or like posthumous kind of like, we need to talk about Joan Didion. Like,
yeah. She was glamorizing anorexia.
Definitely.
her like sunglasses way more than she does. But yeah, so in this article, he writes, he's not a Luddite. Rather, he sifts through ancient wisdom for applicable nuggets of useful tradition as a bulwark against consumerism. And I was like, well, like sifting through antiquity for selectively usable tidbits is consumerism. It's like literally the definition. I don't know if that's what Paul Scholes is doing, but like you can see the irony here. It's like that Moldbug piece where I was talking about the impossibility of being a right-wing pundit. It's also impossible to be a left-wing pundit, because no matter how good your intentions are and no matter how much you want to help people, you end up just selling them stuff at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, that's like, why the lifestyleification of Lindy is so appropriate for the project, kind of.
I like that he and Taleb are always like kind of locked in warfare.
I know,
because he's like the younger upstart, like stealing the wind from under his wings.
I'll read his book. Maybe we'll finally have him on the pod. He offered to explain Lindy to me over dinner. I never responded because I was scared of its power. And
is it Lindy to be horny for chicks in the DMs? Probably.
Yeah. Podcasting, I think, is relatively Lindy in a tradition of like broadcasting.
Well, it's funny because there was that part in the article where he talks about how Scholes sees therapy or psychiatry as Lindy, but not in the Freud or Jung tradition, but in the sense of like having a friend to confide in, which has been a practice since antiquity. So I guess like podcasting is that too.
Yeah. I mean, philosophy is very Lindy, and podcasters are kind of like modern philosophers. The point is that these guys will always be kind of painted into a corner as trad, and I don't know enough about them to say whether or not they identify as trad or whatever. But again, my point is like you can't be trad because being trad implies saying that the past is always and unanimously better than the present, and then therefore the future, you know? Yeah, and it's so backwards looking. Yeah. In that like Lindy then is not a good, like, it's not actually productive or like predictive.
Yeah, but I think what I like about kind of this,
some things that are new end up being around for a long time.
Well, right, yeah. It's not but that's exactly what I like about this theory or whatever principle, whatever you want to call it, effect. It's that it is like predictive, but it's not foolproof. It's saying again like things that have stuck around are more likely to stick around, but they're not guaranteed to stick around. I think saying things of the past are guaranteed to stick around, those timeless values, blah, blah, that's trad. Like saying like...
But they're not guaranteed to stick around.
Yeah, they're not. And that's what so this isn't entirely trad is what I'm saying. Because it's not saying that the past, like those features of the past, which are editorialized fantasy anyway.
Right.
Like it's not necessarily hedging all its bets on those things. Sorry, I'm not making any sense. I'm just saying
okay.
if you are of the mind that things in the past were unanimously and always better, and that therefore the past should be revived or carried over into today, that's trad, and it's impossible.
Right.
But if you're of the mind that certain things from the past were better and they're therefore likely to persevere or endure, that to me is not trad, that's just being sensible, you know?
Is that Lindy?
I guess, yeah. I think it's like...
I guess you're kind of Lindy.
Yeah. I'm trying to make a stupid feminine case for Lindy.
Okay. Sure. I mean, I'm on board, again, because it does seem like intuitively, like, of course.
Yeah.
I take Lindy walks all the time.
Yeah, I love that.
Strolling is
What's a Lindy walk? It's just a regular walk.
It's just a stroll.
It's a walk, yeah.
Yeah. Like an aimless stroll.
Yeah, literally like every civilization has known of this concept.
But I guess, I mean, I'm glad that Lindy's like breaking through into the mainstream in that way, because a lot of the things that it seems to like espouse or advocate for do seem healthy. Getting your steps in and
being a pescatarian.
I had an acai bowl this morning.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, is this Lindy? Because I'm eating like an ancient berry.
Yeah. Wait, I thought acai was like a newfangled thing. It's an ancient thing that just went back into style.
I think maybe in the 70s it was popular and now it's popular again. But it must have some, you know, berries are very Lindy.
Yeah, like grazing and harvesting.
Exactly.
That's why women are so good at shopping, because they're used to picking berries and
eating nuts and berries.
Yeah. Is shopping Lindy?
Women really need their own kind of rubric, I think.
Yeah, probably.
Because they've been excluded from like civilization for the vast majority of, you know.
Yeah.
So for them to even like have a framework or participate in civilized discourse isn't Lindy.
Damn.
You know?
Yeah.
They'd be like living in huts, like squatting out kids.
Yeah.
It would be the Lindiest thing for them to do, I guess.
In the longhouse. What
Being
else?
part of a harem, Lindy.
Is Lindy, yeah. Feminism
sex
is
work
not
is Lindy.
Yeah. And then I guess they have to end on like a kind of positive moral lesson. So I guess he deems vaccination Lindy. It's
unclear. He gets vaccinated.
Yeah, he gets vaccinated. Yeah.
But of course he does, because there's no consistency in what he actually believes.
No offense.
Book deals are Lindy.
Yeah, book deals are always Lindy. Yeah.
Getting a publicist is Lindy.
Yeah. Do you think Paul Scalise has a publicist or a manager?
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
I do. I think getting a profile in the Times
means you have.
Basically means you have.
I see. So I guess that means BAP doesn't have one. I guess they can't publish the line about mulatto commissars with Charlie Sheen faces in the New York Times.
In the paper of record.
Yeah.
Though we've been profiled without, but I kind of feel like with, you know, the book deal implication, it does seem.
Wait, we've been profiled in the New York Times?
Not in the Times, but in like the Cut or whatever.
Oh, right.
Like,
yeah.
People do reach out to us for.
I've been mentioned pejoratively several times in the New York Times, which is cool because I now have more New York Times mentions than my own father.
I remember
which
that.
Is pretty sick.
That's my dad was super proud of me because a German paper published like a photo of me that said like champion from Belarus.
Yeah.
As my dad's pretty Lindy because he was like an aspiring Olympian.
Yeah.
You know, so his lifestyle's like been pretty Lindy for a while. He's pretty strong. Your
dad is sort of like the platonic ideal of what all these guys on Twitter want to be.
Yeah. Basically, yeah.
They want to be like a ripped 50-year-old guy who can wrestle a man half his age down to the ground or something.
Who's so proud of it. Dochka.
Yeah.
Speaking of not Lindy.
Yeah.
Victoria's Secret rebrand.
Oh yeah. How excited are you for Megan Rapinoe?
Paloma Elsesser, Priyanka Chopra, and some other broads are going to constitute something called the VS Collective.
Yeah.
That is sort of the core brand ambassadors / like creative consultants for the new direction Victoria's Secret is going to take, because they haven't actually been a profitable business for a long time.
Yeah, for like at least a decade, right? Or half a decade.
Yeah.
The V7.
The V7.
Yeah, this reminds me of that Kanye when Lady Gaga was like appointed creative director of like Polaroid or Kodak, I don't remember, and he was like, no offense, Lady Gaga's cool, I like some of her songs, but what the fuck does that bitch know about cameras? And I'm just like, what the fuck do some athletic lesbians and fat chicks know about being an angel?
Lingerie. Yeah. Well, they're not. That's the thing.
They're
That's
anti-angels.
They one of the new creative directors said, we need to stop being about what men want and to be about what women want. And that's incredibly short-sighted, because what women want is to be wanted by men.
Yeah. What I want is for
Thus.
Zizek to write an RT column about that exact quote, because it's such a misrepresentation of what Victoria's Secret in its heyday was all about.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, it's easy to revamp your brand when it's in the shitter and you have no choice, you know.
Right.
But like Victoria's Secret it wasn't a male fantasy, it was a female fantasy of what men want.
Bingo.
Seriously.
And now, I mean, I'm actually and will be interested to see how the rebrand goes, like, because I really don't know. I can't predict if it will make it a more profitable company, if this new kind of marketing will appeal to women. My hunch kind of tells me maybe, yeah, just because everyone is so like down to buy whatever's being sold to them, you know?
Yeah.
Here's another quote from Miss Rapinoe, who is one of like the people overseeing the, like, apparently only one, they have a new like board of directors that's all women, and she's one of them. Patriarchal, sexist viewing, not just what it meant to be sexy, but what the clothes were trying to accomplish through a male lens and through what men desired. And it was very much marketed toward younger women. That message, she said, was, quote, really harmful.
You know what's hilarious about that is that they're trying to like slaw off the stench of Epstein, because like the head honcho Leslie Wexler and his like marketing director Ed Razek were associated with that whole like Epstein scandal.
Yeah.
So they end up profiling or hiring Eileen Gu. I don't know that's how you pronounce her name, but she's a 17-year-old freestyle skater. And then, or skier, and then the creative director who they hired gives the soundbite in the same article where he was like, my 15-year-old daughter told me to take this job.
And his daughter said, do it for us, Dad. Do it for the Gen Zers.
Yeah. So yeah, they're just like trying to like, offload kind of their like guilt by association with Epstein. By
employing teenagers,
by
brand
exploiting,
ambassadors.
Yeah.
Well, not to mention that all their underwear is probably made in like Bangladesh or like
Vietnam, by like 16-year-olds,
probably younger, honestly, and that doesn't really enter into any of like the moral rebranding that's happening is very funny. No,
it's always like it's like
a
so
satire.
Transparent at this point. So it's funny because, and they, at the beginning, they say, Victoria's Secret swaps angels for what women want. Will they buy it? The embattled lingerie giant is attempting the most extreme brand turnaround in recent memory, an effort to redefine not just itself, but also the very idea of what sexy is. It's like, women don't want this. Awfuls want this. Like, they're basically implying, it's another one of those like soft bigotry of lowered expectations, like when they call a black woman journalist like tenaciously brilliant.
Sassy.
Sassy.
When they open up the thesaurus to sassy.
Yeah. But like it's like, okay, so you're implying that other women want their lingerie modeled by women who are just as attractive as them, if not less attractive than them, but instead of like aspirationally more attractive.
I mean, still more attractive, like Priyanka Chopra, Jonas or whatever is really hot.
Yeah, she's hot. I'll give her that.
There's like the plus size one, and then the other ones aren't really pictured, or the kind of random, or like more hot but more kind of in the normal spectrum of bodies, which American Apparel already did that.
Yeah, American Apparel did that.
That's what women want.
Eagle did that.
Yeah, which is where we get our underwear.
Yeah, I love their boy short. Yeah, and I actually don't mind their thong too. But the American Eagle did it, and I remember being like shocked by it because they had a model with Down syndrome. We've talked about this, and they had another one who was like wheelchair bound, and they literally had one with like a catheter bag.
No,
I'm not kidding. You can look this up. And I was like, this is like really unpleasant and off-putting. Nobody wants to think about the ethical implications of hiring a girl with Down syndrome to model lingerie. And like, that was always like stunning to me. And I was thinking about how like, in the past, marketing, advertising was aspirational. It was like, again, like Victoria's Secret angels and the Marlboro Man. And now it's like some fat person in a rascal with like a catheter bag. And so it's become guilt driven instead of aspirational. They want to guilt you into buying their clothing because what happens, like the psychological process is that you're understandably.
But does that like, does that actually work on people?
Yeah, totally. Because everybody is a liberal now, and liberals all want to be seen as good people. I think like the psychological process there is like you see an image and you're repulsed or off put by it, which is, by the way, the only sane response. And then you have that inner monologue, like you internalize the outer monologue that your critics would give you, like what kind of a person would be offended at this,
right?
What are you, some kind of monster? And you're like, oh my god, I have to buy these 5 for $35 underwear,
some boy shorts.
Yeah, because you feel guilty that you were horrified and repulsed by them having a model with a literal sorry, like waste product at her waist. Like,
I mean, but the aspirational marketing wasn't working, clearly.
Yeah, I mean,
in the case of Victoria's Secret, right? It's like, I guess I shopped there when I was like a teen.
Yeah.
And still, I mean, I would still buy underwear there, like if I was like at the mall, which I used to go to a lot in LA and stuff, and like the 5 for 25, whatever. But their products have just become increasingly kind of like chintzy and shitty, and like, no, that's more so the problem for me as to why I don't shop there.
Right. And like their perfume gives you a literal migraine when you walk in there. I would walk in there and like walk out with like my head pounding because it was like EDM and cheap perfume.
And I'm wondering, just if I was like a marketing branding consultant, like what my advice would even be, like, what do women want in terms of like lingerie branding? Yeah,
like if you could design a campaign bottom up.
I mean, I think American Apparel really did it well. People want kind of like relatively well-made products at like a relatively cheap price point that are like, you know, hopefully ethically made in some American factories with like branding that kind of makes you like horny,
like and physically like accessible, but sexually abject women.
Exactly. And like it makes you like libidinally invested kind of in the products. And this seems, I mean, they're going to start making nursing bras, which is probably will be lucrative for them because,
I mean, will it? Nobody's having kids.
Well, I mean, in terms of like market expansion, you know, that's something they like didn't used to do that they do now that like people will buy.
Yeah, probably. I guess some people will. Yeah. I mean, it's a weird, it seems like
statistically we're on a downward trajectory with child rearing, but people still have kids. People still need nursing bras.
Yeah. But you can just get one for like $16 on Amazon. That's where I'd be getting mine from.
Yeah, I wonder what how the price point will be. Like 30, what's gonna...
Yeah. I think also most people, or a lot of people, buy stuff in spite of the advertising, whatever the advertising is.
Yeah.
Like once you have like the brand loyalty established, you just like go into the store, you know?
Yeah, I like the underwear at Aerie.
Yeah, it's good.
Like that's where I go.
Yeah, me too.
Target. I used to go to Target. They must not be doing well as a company because every Target I go into nowadays is like all dilapidated and
and Whole Foods too, ever since Amazon bought them. Yeah, well, in the city everything like sucks, but I don't know how it'll go for them. I'm guessing not great, but maybe I'm totally out of touch and I don't understand how that woke marketing works.
I think like with enough kind of money you can activate a robust like advertising. Have you bought Skims, the Kim Kardashian?
No, but I've seen them on Essence.
Yeah, and that made me kind of be like, interesting.
Yeah,
like Essence has them, and I don't know, I haven't quite pulled the trigger, but I'm like very close to almost buying a pair of Skims. And that's like because I'm bombarded with it constantly, and like it has just kind of like ingrained itself as like an option.
I mean, literally, if you are bombarded with something long enough, you just cave and purchase whatever it is. Like, I go to the park every day and there's like Chinese chicks doing their synchronized dancing.
You're going to get into it?
What?
Synchronized dancing?
No, they always do it to this one song that, I kid you not, sounds like Chinese Weekend. It has the same vibe.
Yeah, Dan played this.
Yeah. I texted him because I was like, oh my God, this sounds like Chinese Weekend. It has the same like mood of alienation, but it's like as he put it was like very square because it didn't have like the polish and cool factor of American
pop music.
But it does sound like The Weeknd in a weird way, and I like love the song so much because I like have listened to it so many times that I made Eli get up and approach these women and Shazam it. And now I listen to this weird Chinese song. I don't know who sings it. I don't know what it's called. It's just Chinese characters on my Spotify.
Cool.
And I'm just like, yeah.
I want to hear it.
Yeah. If we get sued for using the tattoo song, we should just make this our theme song.
Don't, Anna. We've been doing so well.
I know. But like, you know, and they talk about this from the standpoint, like, of course, they like wheeled in some consultant who's talking about like female empowerment and how we need more of it. And it's like, women don't need more empowerment. We're about as empowered as we can get. Like,
they need to be empowered to make consumer choices.
Yeah.
To buy specific kind of underwear and bras.
Yeah. The specific like brand.
That's all they mean by empowerment.
Yeah. It's like when they talk about women needing to be more empowered on the internet, they just mean like women have to be like less anonymous and agree to sell their data, which means like they have to do like the obligatory war on like trolls and anons because they bully and harass women or whatever
and show their nipples.
Yeah. This is also funny. Still, the question remains, why would women like Miss Rapinoe and Miss Chopra Jones want to risk their names by placing their stamp of credibility on Victoria's Secret?
Money, baby.
Yeah.
Why would they want to do such a thing?
And it's like money, and also none of these women have credibility. Like, what is Priyanka Chopra known for? Like, she's beautiful, but she's literally known for being married to like a Jonas brother and having horrible style.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm still traumatized by this image I saw of her where she was wearing like those Anne de Meulemeester like riding boots, like goth boots with like pleated shorts and like a blazer and a tiny little vest, and one of her legs was in a cast.
I mean, that's not her fault.
I know it's not, but it was like, this is like such a chaotic image.
I know nothing about. I've only heard of this Paloma lady because you brought her up once. I think.
She's like a local Times Square it girl. I see her around Times Square all the time. You can't miss her. She's really pretty in the face, and like she looks like Angie Martinez at her height or something. Here's a quote or a line about her. Elsa Sarah saw part of her role as lobbying for Victoria's Secret to increase its sizing to XXXXXL. She said it currently carries extra large 5XL.
5XL.
Like it currently carries 42G in bras and XXL in nightwear. It's like, I'm sorry, I'm not being fat phobic here. I'm being health-philic. But like 5XL, like no one should be that size. Like let's not encourage people to be that sick.
Well, with the vanity sizing, maybe it's really more like a
regular XL. Yeah.
I don't know. Or I guess vanity sizing would work the other way. It's actually like a 10XL or something. No, that seems insane.
Yeah, nobody needs.
That's just highly. I mean, less and less so, but that's very like deviant. Like you should have to go to a special store to get like stuff that size.
Remember, like in the 90s, where there was like big and tall stores for men. Yeah, like you shouldn't. If you wear 5XL, you shouldn't be wearing a thong. No offense. Well, or like a push-up bra.
Well, I don't think they'll probably still have thongs, but I don't think they're gonna be the same like designs.
it'll be like those that material like that they make like ropes for mountain climbers. Just like super reinforced.
It's a harness.
It's just like a hammock that you get at Home Depot. Like, I'm sorry, but why would you want to make those products for 5XL?
Just like empowering,
a king size fitted sheet. I'm sorry. Anyway.
Should we talk about the dogs?
The dogs, yeah. I'd love to talk about dogs. Wait, can you explain this wasabi thing to me? It's a dog that won the Westminster like dog kennel show. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, which I thought was around Thanksgiving. It's like the G7 summit. I'm like always surprised when it's happening because it feels like it's happening all the time. But yeah, the Westminster Dog Show winner was a Pekingese named Wasabi. And the New York Post wrote an article about how Wasabi sparked some controversy. And fetched online criticism for allegations of animal mistreatment and cultural appropriation. What's not to like about this dog? Show judge Patricia Trotter rhetorically asked on Sunday. Well, Twitter answered, and they had a bone to pick.
I love that.
People pointed out how unnaturally kind of like designer dogs like Pekingese and pugs and stuff. One user called it the terrible price these dogs pay for human vanity. Someone else said, I don't hate, just wish we wouldn't breed dogs to have such unnatural and harmful characteristics. We have it in our power to change this. Someone else said, breeding and keeping dogs like these should be illegal in the 21st century. I mean, why is that good? It's a thing to carry, place on a cushion, groom. What kind of pet is that? The, in quotes, dog does not care how mean anyone is on Twitter, for fuck's sake. He just wants to breathe properly.
Gotta euthanize them all.
Well, that was the other big piece of dog news.
Yeah.
Sending ripples through Twitter.
What are your thoughts on this Pekingese?
Really cute.
It's cute.
I mean, dog breeding is like
horrible. But it's a thing.
No.
I mean, it's like
I wasn't going to say it's horrible. I'm going to say it's kind of Lindy.
Yeah.
In that we have these like kennel clubs and institutions that like that's what the dog show is. It's not like an award for best dog. It's an award given to the dog that is like bred to the specifications of its category.
Right. It's
like a eugenics kind of contest basically. Yeah. And the Pekingese is very finely formed.
Right.
And people love to say that like, you know, those dogs that are like specially bred or like inbred and stuff, but actually the American Kennel Club has like measures in place that prevent inbreeding to qualify for stuff like this. Like these are the best of the best.
Right.
They're not inbred.
Okay. I was going to say
Wasabi's not like
inbred.
Yeah.
I mean, I was going to say that like, I was just thinking of like puppy mills, but I guess that's like caliber or many calibers below, like that type of breeding.
And obviously the desire, like the consumer desire for like specialty breeds and designer dogs and stuff does fuel puppy mills. And that's, I guess, problematic.
Yeah.
But my take on it is kind of like they exist anyway and their lives are just as valid as like a scrappy, intelligent mutt. Who cares if they're like inbred and have trouble breathing? Like,
yeah, I mean, it sucks. I look at these French bulldogs and pugs that are very popular in this year parts, and they're so cute and so lovable. And I'm just like, you're a totally unviable animal. You cannot breathe out of your nose, and you cannot breed normally because
But that's not what they're bred for.
Yeah, they're bred for like human enjoyment, I guess. And you can make the case that like,
well, French bulldogs were very popular with Russian aristocracy, and lots of like toy breeds were bred kind of like for royalty. They're aristocratic. They're like the dogs of decadence for their aesthetic features and their like companionship to aristocrats.
Yeah. Well, you know who had a French bulldog is Felix Yusupov, who was a noble who was kind of central in organizing the plot to kill Rasputin. And there's a very famous portrait by this guy Valentin Serov, who I actually did my undergraduate thesis on, of him holding his little French bulldog in his arms, and the dog was called Napoleon, and it was apparently like a real terror. It would have been put down for behavioral euthanasia purposes today. But like, yeah, it's like that. And there's actually another beautiful portrait of his mother with like a kind of white fluffy dog. Like, yeah, Russian royals were very fond of these kind of like useless toy dogs, but I mean, they're cute.
That's why, and pugs were popular in like Vienna or Austria, and then in France, obviously, poodles.
Yeah.
And probably French bulldogs as well, I'd guess, because Russians were so obsessed with French aristocracy and
Yeah, and there's probably a lot of like expats and of the Russian ilk in France.
For me, it's like, it's less of a moral issue. What bothers me is like the cognitive dissonance, I guess, of like people who, if you want a designer dog, you have to kind of just own it and be like, yes, I want a dog for like
for aesthetic purposes.
For aesthetic purposes. I mean, I want a dog really desperately.
Okay.
I can't really. I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not.
Now's not the time. Yeah.
Now's not the time. I wouldn't be a very fit mother.
Mm-hmm.
And I probably will get a rescue.
Yeah.
Or like, I don't think I will get a designer dog, but I grew up with one. I grew up with a Weimaraner that we got from like a breeder because my parents liked William Wegman and they wanted a Weimaraner.
That's so cute.
And
that's so Russian.
Yeah.
To like William Wegman. Yeah.
Exactly.
My mom loved William Wegman and she loves Weimaraners too.
Yeah. I mean, they're gorgeous dogs. And he was like, his name was Fosse.
That's also very Russian.
Also very
name
Russian.
Your dog after Bob Fosse was American, right?
Choreographer. Yeah.
That's really cute and familiar.
And he had a ton of like emotional problems and was definitely like neurotic. My parents also never got him fixed.
That's also very
also
Russian.
Incredibly Russian. But I loved him. You know, he was like my childhood. I grew up with him. I'm an only child. And I think it's valid to get like the kind of dog you want because dogs are you're keeping a domesticated animal in your home anyway. Like, let's not.
Yeah, it's not like the gravest sin to get a designer dog. It's not as bad as racism or misogyny to have a designer dog.
French bulldog. Yeah. And the breathing problems, like that dog just wants to breathe properly. Like Wasabi doesn't know what it means to breathe properly.
Yeah, there's no
like,
context. Yeah.
They're bird brained basically, especially like in the toy breeds. Though poodles are smart.
Yeah, poodles are great. I've grown to love poodles. I like never gave a shit about them before, but like recently, like I realized how smart they are.
I find them so charming.
Yeah, they're like cool.
And luckily they're often available, through rescues and stuff too.
Yeah, I have no dog in the fight, no pun intended. Because I've never been a dog owner.
Person.
Yeah. But speaking of that, I really suspect that what will happen to you is what happened to me. Where like I never intended to get a beautiful purebred designer cat, but she like walked into my life off of the street.
Yeah.
So like something like that, I'm not saying that specifically, but something like that can happen.
I'll find the right dog for me.
Yeah, eventually, yeah.
And you know,
without resorting to a breeder, probably.
Yeah, I mean, I do think French bulldogs are really, really cute, especially when they're puppies, but the vibe that being a woman with a French bulldog gives off is so like fur baby, because they literally feel like little like babies.
Yeah, they do. They have
like
a similar body.
Like it's I don't think it's like a good look. I'd rather have like a standard poodle or some kind of like hot, cool dog rather than like a dog that resembles like a human child to symbolize my like barren womb.
And has like the same, like it's in the same weight class and has similar like fuzzy folds.
Exactly.
Anyway, should we talk about behavioral euthanasia?
Yeah. So last week the Slate article was making the rounds written by a woman who wrote about her experience as adopting during the pandemic a 6-year-old beagle that then proceeded to rack up an impressive like bite record, and that she had to make the decision to behaviorally euthanize when like the kennel she got it from refused to take it back, and she couldn't find like a suitable home for it and couldn't live like being terrorized by this like poorly behaved dog anymore.
Yeah, I mean, how long or like how soon before we go from behavioral euthanasia for pets to behavioral euthanasia for people? Like, that guy's racist. He should be euthanized.
I am against unequivocally behavioral euthanasia for dogs. I think it's a abhorrent thing to do.
Yeah, no, it's horrible. I like, first of all, I thought it was funny how many titles this piece had, because they do like all the kind of like SEO whatever stuff. But one headline was "When Bonnie Came Home." Another one was "Behavioral Euthanasia. When training failed my dog, I found a solution no one wants to talk about." And then last but not least, "I adopted a pandemic dog and then I had to put her down. I learned I'm far from alone." And it's like, training didn't fail your dog. Humans failed your dog.
I mean, you failed your dog.
Yeah. You didn't have to put her down, even if some other humans in the past failed her, which was why she was a behavioral basket case, presuming kind of generously that was the case. Like, no one held a gun to your head. Right.
Well, she describes, this is all kind of in the context of the so-called pandemic puppy boom. She says that between March and July 2020, pet adoptions rose 15% from the same stretch in 2019.
Kind of like murder rates.
Interesting. And that she tried to work with trainers to like fix the dog's behavioral problems, who told her, quote, "There are no untrainable dogs, only untrainable people."
Yeah.
And then after she puts the dog down, she comes across a Facebook support group called Losing Lulu for pet owners who've had to make the difficult choice to opt for behavioral euthanasia. "If love was enough, you'd still be here," reads the group's cover photo in bubble letters. And then she talks to this other, like, I don't know, dog expert who tells her, "You need to try everything that's reasonable for you, not everything." I think the Lulus meaning pets who are put down by the choice of their owner for being poorly behaved, are the most loved pets of all. Trying is hard, but I think to stop trying is much harder.
Yeah, I mean, this is like so crazy. I was reading this and I was like, okay, like, I sympathize with her situation. Like, you never know what you're going to get when you adopt an animal or a child, or have an animal or a child. But like,
this poor beagle.
But what kind of person writes an article about this? Like, she must have known on some level that this article would go viral, would make its way into the outrage cycle, right? And it's like, you know, I think like I was reading all of her like rationalizations. She was like, I was posting videos and stories and people didn't realize that
my hand was hurt from the dog biting me.
Yeah, or like she was biting her paws until they bled, and it was like, it felt like so manipulative.
She does not come across sympathetic, and I agree with the take that she basically gave her dog an anxiety disorder. I think that much is clear.
Or like, even like, again, generously, charitably, if the dog already had an anxiety disorder because it was an adult dog. But like, I don't know. Okay, I mean, it's just weird. Again, I setting aside my judgment of her particular situation, it's weird to disclose and publicize taking such an action. If you do behaviorally euthanize your dog, you should do so privately, shamefully and guiltily. Like, you should live with that yourself. And I think
she clearly only got the dog to post pictures of it on Instagram in the first place.
Yeah, totally. And then her desire to absolve herself of guilt by going on these Reddit and Facebook groups, by talking to trainers, by writing an article about it.
If love was enough, you'd still be here.
And then of course she gets bitten in the ass because people get angry, because people are very touchy about animals as a way of not processing their feelings toward people.
Yeah.
And it's like, you can anticipate, if you write an article about an animal, people will flip their shit. And this is all of this is because she felt guilty and ashamed for euthanizing this dog, and again wanted to crowdsource some sympathy. And got in trouble. And it's like, you did this to yourself, girl. Like, if I behaviorally euthanized
maybe she
an
wanted
animal,
deep down to be punished as well.
Yeah,
because she knows what she did was wrong.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's totally probably on some level what it is. It's just like a weird kind of thing to do.
Because I do think there is, like, dogs are, once again, bred, not to be some kind of dog expert, but they're bred to be trained, and they can be like traumatized and like poorly socialized and have like problems.
Yeah.
But if you are such an anxious person that you're triggering your dog to keep fighting you. I'm not to victim blame or whatever, but she was never fit to be a dog owner in the first place.
Yeah, I don't think like she should. I don't know. I mean, she makes like
she should have got a brain dead designer dog so she could post pictures of it like sleeping 20 hours a day on Instagram, because that's clearly what she wanted.
Yeah, and then it would have died at 6 years old anyway because it had like genetic problems, and she would have been, you know, free. This is one of the trainers who started this Lulu group. It's a tricky thing to navigate from my perspective within the veterinary industry. If we don't talk about it at all, it remains in the shadows. And it's like, good, this is something that should remain in the shadows. It shouldn't be talked about. It's not like racism or sexual assault. It doesn't concern other people. It is a profoundly shameful, evil thing to do. And if you do it, again, you should do it privately and then simmer in your own guilt and shame in private, and don't talk about it with anybody. This is not something that we have to have like a necessary conversation about.
Facebook group for.
Yeah.
Where you convince yourself that you actually loved your dog the most, and that the hardest decision to make was for you to put it down.
Yeah. And this is like, the scary thing is that she talks about how she like upgraded the dog's euthanasia date because it bit her sooner than she had expected. And she talks about like this whole like tear-jerking, heartbreaking moment where because of COVID protocol she couldn't be in the room with her dog, and some like veterinary tech let it away and it was like yelping. And I don't know, that's like, you know, and of course, like in true awful fashion, she made a social media post after the dog was euthanized without disclosing the true details of the situation.
Said the dog had a disease that it had before she adopted it. What a psychopath.
Yeah, it's like such a...
why?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's like totally... this is also so manipulative when she talks about the dog moments before it's euthanized. In a few minutes, I was led down a hallway. I coaxed Bonnie to follow. A staffer showed me to the room Bonnie needed to enter. I gave Bonnie one last pat, then handed her Kelly green leash to the tall man in the scrubs and in scrubs and a mask. As he shut the door behind me, I heard Bonnie whine a protest to being separated from me. I'm shattered when I think back to that moment. But at the time, everything was blank. I mean, how do you think the dog felt? I'm sure it knew that it was like being led to its slaughter. This is also very manipulative. In the days after Bonnie was put down, I roamed my newly empty home like a zombie. I didn't sleep much, and when I did, I was startled awake by nightmares of being bitten. Crushed with guilt, I wondered if there was more I could have done to help my sweet beagle.
Ugh. Disgusting, contemptible.
Yeah, it's like everything is like so creepy and manipulative.
Yeah. Dogs can sense fear. That's like something. I'm not a dog trainer like Leia's dad. No bad dogs training. But it's dogs. Animals can feel your like intention. And they are trainable if you aren't afraid of them. And if you're scared of them, it freaks them out. Yeah. That's just like dogs 101.
I mean, I've had the experience of like dog sitting a dog that was like very finicky and like traumatized. And I remember like I was just calm around it, and he didn't snap at other people when I was around. You know, it's like if you can kind of like broadcast an even calm, dogs respond to that. Like even with training, you're not supposed to let them like walk in front of you or whatever, because they are pack animals and they're looking for a leader. They want somebody who has good leadership skills, like women. No, I mean, it's serious. Like I think I'm being like facetious here, but I think all people and animals are attracted to confidence.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah, that's why sometimes
dogs respond well to confidence. They're bred for it.
Yeah, and like I understand also, I sympathize with this woman's situation.
I don't.
In the sense that like I get that it was like maybe like inconvenient or difficult for her to deal with this dog if she's being truthful, which I don't know if she is, because she has even in this post she has like a weird little history of lying.
I mean, it wasn't a pit bull.
Yeah,
it wasn't gonna like rip her apart to shreds in her sleep or something.
Well, beagles are like they can be very aggressive because they're like hunter dogs. Yeah, but I get her situation. I don't get the impulse to disclose it. Yeah, to be like virally piled on. And it's like you know, like I think about it this way. Like I really like what Vincent Gallo had to say. I don't remember where he said this, and I'm going to paraphrase him, and I hope I'm not mangling what he said. But he was talking about how basically he's the type of person that will take the blame, take the fault, even if it's something that he can't control. So he was saying, I think the quote was like, you know, even if I'm struck by lightning, I ask how it was my fault. And like, I'm of the same persuasion. I think that if you agree to take on something, even if it proves to be inconvenient and unpleasant, if it's a living creature, you see it through. It's not like buying a house or a car. You know what I'm saying?
Definitely.
And like, you know, I think about this in when I was pregnant and I had to do like this battery of genetic tests, and you get like weird results, and there were like some scares, you know.
Yeah. And
at the end, they were like, "Do you want to take the test for the Jewish genetic disorders?" Because Eli's 100% Jewish. I'm like marginally Jewish, but significantly enough that it counts. And like Jews are known for having their own because they're inbred.
And your baby tested positive for being Jewish.
Yeah, and gay. And I said no, but I was like, no, I don't want to take these tests because I'm like 28 weeks in. If the kid is
Jewish,
if
then
the kid
it's
is
Jewish.
Yeah. I was like, yeah, like if there's something wrong, like, okay, I will deal with it. I'm going to love this creature no matter what.
Yeah.
And like, I know also a dog is not a child.
No, but they're a living being and they're valid.
But if you take on something living, such as a animal or a baby, you have to see it through. Like you can't
just get bored during the pandemic and get a beagle and then put it down when it like disappoints you because you're like an anxious awful who's unfit to be a dog owner.
And I'm like shocked that like, you know, this woman has a boyfriend. You would think she'd be a singleton.
Yeah. Well, when she talks about rehoming it, like seeing it through can also mean like you can send it to Glenn Greenwald's dog sanctuary in Brazil, or you can like find a home for your dog if you really can't live with it, you know?
Yeah, that part I found dubious and sketchy too. She's like, I called some places and they just
said
like
no, and no one wanted it, I guess. And like if I gave it to someone, they'd put it down anyway. Like that was a very manipulative turn there too.
Yeah, it was like very weak. Like everything like didn't like initially like, yeah, I was like, okay, like I get it. I'm zen. I'm not going to be judgmental. And then I was like, oh my God, like the lies and manipulations.
The lies are
piling up. Yeah. I think the telling part was when she describes how the dog bit a man on the street and he didn't seem to care.
Yeah. To her surprise.
Yeah. And I was like, maybe this dog isn't as bad as you say it is.
I'm certain that if she wasn't such a like imbalanced neurotic, the home would have been more suitable for like a rescue dog. Yeah.
And yeah, again, I believe that she didn't know what she was getting into, but she should have like at least seen it through. Like I've been fucked up by so many cats. My body is like a temple to abuse at the hands of felines. But like to like then have the animal euthanized, it's crazy that this is also like an industry. It's probably a growth industry too, because all these like libtards are like euthanizing their pets.
After the pandemic puppy boom.
It's just like crazy, and it does make me scared on some level.
Now that they can go on vacations again.
Yeah, like Ted Cruz and his family euthanizing their French bulldog. I don't know. I mean, I just think, yes, like managing kind of the unpleasant aspects of like mortality is weird.
Yeah. Or living even with like, I mean, there were definitely moments during the pandemic where I've like wanted the companionship of a dog, like very deeply.
I thought you were going to say you wanted to be euthanized.
Also that.
Yeah.
But it's also about just like living with the unpleasantness of kind of boredom and loneliness of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And rather than like taking on the responsibility of caring for a living animal that you aren't qualified for.
Well, this bitch also has a boyfriend. Wasn't he providing her with the emotional support that she desperately needed?
Yeah.
I guess not.
I mean, she clearly wanted like the Instagram.
Yeah. Well, she got it.
posts. And she really got it.
Yeah, she did. Yeah. She's like the Jamila Jamil of dog euthanasia. Congratulations. Anyway.
That's the show.
Yeah, we've been going for
It's a long one.
All right. I'm ready to sign off.
See you in hell.